Firstly, I'd just like to say a big thank you to all the guys at ARC for putting on such a fantastic show. And if you join me in giving a quick round of applause so far. So my name's Ben. I work for a company called Sabisu. We're based in Manchester in the UK. And before I start, I'd just like to say I'm going to cover what we've been talking about from a slightly different angle. I'm going to be looking at how social networks can improve operational efficiency from an internal standpoint, particularly in a kind of industrial context. So firstly, before I get into it, I'd just like to share a little bit about what we do, just to provide a bit of background. So these are the 6 areas in which Sabisu go towards helping our customers. I'll just share a little bit about each one. So total integration. I mean, there's many people out on the market at the moment who are integrating systems. We believe that the importance of this is that you go beyond simply bringing the systems together, but you actually make it easy for your experts within your organization to go and find that data, and also how you address the concern of a growing volume of data, ever-increasing growing volume of data within organizations. So leading straight on to that is find and share. So how you enable your experts to go and find that information, curate it, and then share it with other like-minded individuals, perhaps in their community. And layered on top of this, I think the real important part and the interesting part is how you can adopt the kind of strategies and techniques that social media platforms like Facebook, like LinkedIn, like Twitter have made so apparent and so good, how you can layer those into a real operational context. And what you get when you do all this is you tend to find that you create a very socially engaged workplace where it's centered around communities who have a common interest, and it means that you're able to perhaps extract and capture some of that tacit knowledge that we've all been talking about with people who are potentially going to be leaving your organization in the next few years. Another really exciting point which kind of leads on from this, and where a couple of our customers are finding real benefit, is applying a lot of these principles not only internally but in your broader value chain and supply chain. So you can take these abilities to share and capture information internally and share it to your suppliers, your customers, potentially third parties like regulatory bodies. And of course, an ever-present concern is that you can do all this in a secure way where data doesn't leave the organization or the corporate network, and built on an architecture, of course, that is familiar to the things that you guys are used to. So what does it look like? Well, this is just a quick view of it, but I'll get more into the customer stories in a minute. So as you can see, you've got a kind of custom view of what is interesting to you. So this was actually created by one of the energy monitoring team in one of our customers. So he was able to build the dashboard himself without loading IT. And if you notice at the bottom, there's 2 very interesting collaborative tools that are highly purposed and focused around the data. So not only can you engage in a kind of text chat or a video chat, but you can also share this information directly with other people in your community, so your other colleagues or people around the organization. So we believe that the trend is going towards richer forms of communication. I mean, we all know and we all love email, and it's not going to go away. But what I would suggest is that other forms of communication, which are more appropriate to certain circumstances, like real-time chat or like video chat, these things are going to start becoming more apparent in organizations, and people in the kind of consumer space are already very familiar with these things like Skype, Facebook, text messaging. And when these people start coming into your organization, they're going to expect this kind of technology. And if you don't have it, it may well be a massive deterrent for them joining you. And of course, as I keep mentioning, the real key to this is making sure that it's purposed and centered around business objectives and business data. So that's the introduction. So a quick overview. The 3 main things I'm going to share with you are lessons learned from a customer in an industrial setting, how they framed requirements for what they wanted from an operational social network, and the impacts it had on their business. So I'll quickly get into that. So the customer I'm going to be talking about is a company called SABIC. So they are the Saudi Arabian Basic Industries Cluster, I believe. And the guys that we deal with are the plants that they operate in the UK. So just a couple of quick stats about SABIC, just to give you an idea. Globally, they have 33,000 employees on 60 sites in 40 countries. And between all their sites, they're producing about 59 million tons of product a year. In 2009, their turnover was about 40 billion revenue, assets of about 85 billion, and profits of 6 billion. So a big organisation. So this is their first experiences of an enterprise social network. And as a couple of the guys have been talking about, this is an adoption curve for Yammer, which is a kind of instant messaging system which they used internally for about 18 months. So on the x-axis you've got time, and on the y-axis you've got activity. And the two curves show, the red one is user activity, and the blue one is user registrations. So as a couple of the guys have alluded to, what's quite common is when you first introduce something like this, you get a huge influx of people registering and a lot of activity. But very quickly people run out of ideas, run out of steam, get bored of using it, and it has a massive, huge tail off, almost to the point where no one's using it anymore. And then suddenly, something happens which is called the 9-month bounce. And after about 9 months, you seem to find that the people who have stayed with it and are really posting valuable content into the communities, people start paying attention, and user registrations begin to rocket, and user activity in the broader communities begins to pick up as well. Interestingly, what happened after 18 months was SABIC decided that they couldn't actually find a real operational benefit to having another instant messaging system, so they actually pulled it from the system. But what it caused them to do was to decide how they could frame the requirements for what they wanted from an actual operational social network within the business. And they asked themselves a simple question, is how can this improve operational efficiency? Where's the business case for it? So what they did was they took a lot of the available social media tools, social networking tools, and they amongst other things, they plotted them on various charts. And this one looks at the operational benefits, both internal and external, and the form of communication, both internal and external. And what they did is they categorized them into 6 areas. The first one was virtual social environments. Second one was social organization, so things like Facebook and LinkedIn. Third one was content communities, things like Flickr and YouTube. The third one was blogs and microblogs. Sorry, the fourth one, I beg your pardon. Fifth one was collaborative projects, things like Wikipedia. And then finally, virtual operational environments. And if I just move on one more slide, what they decided was that different categories that they'd created had different merits. So down in the bottom left, many of the tools had very great, huge benefits for things like branding, customer care, PR and sales. But it wasn't what they were looking for. They were looking for operational efficiency. So again, the middle section, a lot of these tools were great for disseminating information, innovating within the company, but it wasn't what they were looking for from an operational standpoint. So they really focused in on the categories that brought genuine business process execution. And they came up with these following requirements. I'm not going to read them all out, but these are the things that they deemed would be the most important to an operational social network within their business. Just a couple to pick up on that I think are really important is the kind of shared experience of the communities within your business, and that's particularly focused around areas of interest like energy online monitoring, operations, HR, sales, all the different communities within your business. So what they decided to do, rather than going for a big shot, one-time implementation across the whole business, they decided to take a really discrete problem, a high-value problem, and address that. And the thing that they went for was energy real-time monitoring. So at the plant in Teesside in the UK, it's a fairly discrete team of about 7 to 10 people. They're all experts in what they do, and what they encouraged was the sorry, I'll just explain the business process. I'm sure you're all familiar with this kind of thing. You've got lots of groups of people who all feed into the process. The energy guys obviously are sharing information with procurement execs, the mass balance team, operations, shift teams, and you've got data coming in from all sorts of places. And if you just layer over some of the software systems that are used in there, clearly you've got data historians like Aspen Tech, which you'll be familiar with, an Emerson system in there. You've also got your ERP system, which in this case was SAP. And a lot of the information flow was served through email. I mean, we're all familiar with email, but people were essentially taking snapshots of information from these systems and just firing it out to their various communities via email. So you're only getting a real fragment of information whenever you send a spreadsheet out, and obviously the worry is there that you're just going to duplicate them and duplicate them and duplicate them, and the amount of data just rapidly increases and the margin for error increases. So what they did was they brought all of the energy online monitoring into a single place and allowed, or invited I should say, all the different departments who are interested in this data, who would take value from it, to look at it. So they're all looking at the same data, one version of the truth. They've all got a shared dashboard, shared experience. And what they found is that, I beg your pardon, what they encouraged was that the energy manager created this dashboard, being the leading expert in that field. And once he'd done that, he was able to, within a few clicks, invite and share all the various communities in to look at it. So if we quickly flick back to this view of how it looks, again, what you can see here is some of the dials are pulling in information from IP21, Aspen Tech IP21. Some of the speedos are bringing information from the DCS system. On the tank monitoring system there at the bottom left, you've got information coming from a SQL system. And you've also got, in some of the charts, you've got information coming from SAP. So the point being that the energy monitoring guy doesn't really care where the information is coming from. What he cares about is that he can do something useful with it and he can take action on it and he can share it with people who are also interested. Just a brief note as well on the communication tools again at the bottom. I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar with an example where someone sent you a text message or an email and you may have misinterpreted the intention or the meaning behind it in terms of the tone and the voice and the language they were using. So what we've tried to do here is put tools and collaboration tools in place that allow you to get a much richer form of information. So for video chat, for example, you can see people's tone, you can see their expression on their face, and you get a much deeper understanding of what you're trying to communicate. And again, I've got to stress it's really important that it's all focused around the operational data. So just another quick look here. This is a separate view in Sabisu, which we call the hub. And I'm just going to quickly talk you through some of this, because this is where the operations and the social techniques really come together to form a social workplace. So on the left-hand side here, you've got a list of all the communities you're part of, and you're able to filter what you see on this page by community. Down at the bottom, you've got all the people who are part of that community, so it's going to be your colleagues, or it might be other people within the business. In the middle, this is the bit that you may be familiar with. You've got a kind of fire hose, which is a timeline of all the activity that's going on in that community. So again, this is where you're bringing in the principles of things like Twitter and Facebook, but putting them into a real operational context. So for example, if somebody was coming onto a new shift in the morning, they would be able to quickly go in and review the timeline of any activity that might have happened overnight, and it quickly gets them up to speed. And again, it's a way of going towards helping to capture some of that tacit knowledge which is within the businesses, which may be leaving in the next few years. And also, side by side, you've got any related documents that may be relevant to that community, again, so it saves you going digging around any shared drives. So, again, I'm not going to read all these, but see, these are some of the major benefits that SABIC identified. And there's a couple that I'd really like to pick up on. So, allowing end users rather than IT to go and curate this valuable data is a huge plus for them. I mean, as with all your IT departments, I'm sure they're all ever decreasing and having to do more with less. And enabling the end users to go and do a lot of this off their own back means that you can then spend your time doing more useful things. And I think I'd just like to share one more story with you, which is one of the parts that really excites me. SABIC have got a supplier who come onto the plant and they do all their leak detection and remediation. So they go around all the pipes, check for leakages, and repack them if need be. And traditionally they used to store all that data in a spreadsheet, and it was kept on a laptop off-site. And SABIC were thrilled to bits with the service this company were providing and couldn't fault them for it. The thing that they were really, really nervous about was the fact that this really sensitive leak detection data was being held in a laptop, out of their control, off-site. So what they did was they encouraged this company to bring their database and their process into Sabisu. And now whenever they go out onto site and enter data, it's in a shared space, so they invite SABIC in to look at the data. So they've got a real-time view of it. There's no quarterly reports. They can go in and look at it whenever they want. And the vision here, and this is the really interesting part, is what SABIC are planning to do is to aggregate numerous suppliers who are providing a service to them and entering data into this kind of format, and build a dashboard where they can share that on again to the environmental agency. So they're the UK regulatory body who regulate these plants. So again, rather than SABIC having to compile this great huge report on an annual basis, they can simply invite the Environment Agency to look in at certain aspects of their data. And you know, the benefits there are immediate in terms of transparency and reducing the amount of reporting you're doing. Finally, I'd like to share a couple of conclusions. It's certainly our opinion that a social network that has a purpose doesn't need the critical mass for it to deliver value. As you can see, we implemented it into a very small, initially a very small subset of the business. And the fact that it was purposed and focused on a very niche set of requirements with people who were all having a shared experience meant that it delivered value almost instantaneously. Secondly, it always worries me slightly when you hear about companies who are acquiring other businesses to bolt on social features. And it's certainly our belief that these principles should be embedded in the software from day one to really deliver the kind of value that you want. Thirdly, as I've mentioned a couple of times now, enabling the end users to go in and configure the dashboards and the user interface components themselves is really important, because at the end of the day, if they have to wait 3 weeks for something to happen, then it's not ideal and it's loading IT. And finally, kind of goes hand in hand with the first point. There are many lessons to be learned from the kind of the consumer social networks out there, but I'd always treat those lessons with caution when you're applying them to an operational context, because those networks depend on huge amounts of people, whereas I think in an operational context, it's more the niche communities that you're going to get the value from. So I'd like to say thank you very much for your time. If you're interested in learning more, there's a white paper on our site, and I'll be around for questions at the end if anyone has any. Thank you very much.